Hello everyone, my name is Justin Patton and welcome to the May update for the Auburn University RFID Lab. There is a lot to cover this week, so I'll try to get through it pretty quickly. Obviously, it's a very different world now than what it was the last time that I came to you with an update. There's a lot of changes in the retail space, which we are seeing and living as we speak. You probably recognize this on your own, but there have been some huge shifts in how customers are shopping, especially moving to online shopping or moving to buy online, pick up in store, and ship from store. And the stores have been doing a pretty good job of trying to shift and meet those demands appropriately. What we're seeing is about a 5-year forced evolution of the retail space, especially when it comes to apparel and mall stores and consumer packaged goods. And we are seeing some real strains and stresses on the supply chain and on the stores themselves and kind of meeting those demands. The interesting thing is, we've been hammering on that topic of inventory accuracy for years now. It always was important before. Now, especially looking at the stores' numbers, this is probably the #1 problem that retail stores are facing today. We are positioned to help as best we can, especially when it comes to RFID or other identification technologies. And to that end, we have put together a special session of some brands and retailers that can try to help address these issues and also assuage some concerns that we have seen from some of the folks in the industry about the preparedness and readiness of the solution providers. So on June 11th, this was going to be our next board meeting. Obviously, this is going to be a virtual board meeting rather than a face-to-face. But what we're doing is in the morning of that session, we're putting together a special panel of some invited retailers and brands. You should see an email about that shortly. We're inviting clearly all of the Auburn University board members, and any brand and retail partners that are interested in this subject can contact me and we can send you a special invite as well. We're limiting this to end users right now because some of the speakers are going to be speaking with some sensitivity about their current store operations. But that panel is going to talk about why inventory accuracy is important, how the industry is changing, how the supply chain has changed significantly, and how we're going to use technology to help support that in the future. You can hear a little bit about some of the successes we've seen because we've seen some great articles in media and publications, especially regarding Lulu and some of the other stores that have really leaned into the inventory control, and we're in a good shape. And you'll hear some things about grocery and other supply chains that we don't traditionally talk about as well. So we're trying to show that there is a good path forward at the other side of this as we move into kind of the new normal of retail. Also, we're going to have a special panel session of all of the solution providers on the advisory board at the RFID Lab. It's quite a large panel. But we cover the gamut from everything from the chipset manufacturers to the inlay manufacturers to the tag manufacturers to readers and hardware to also software and store solutions and total integration systems. What we really want to do is help put that panel together and answer some of the questions that we consistently get from new folks that are interested in the market right now, which is, are there resources available? Are the solution providers ready to go? Is there availability of hardware? Is there availability of tags and inlays? All of these things are going to be topics that we'll have a panel session that people can listen to and participate and ask some questions at the end. So that panel is going to be hosted in conjunction with GS1 US. GS1 is graciously hosting this for us and putting these panel sessions together. It's going to be most of the morning of June 11th. So again, if you're interested, please contact us and we'll try to get you added onto that invite list. Now, a last thing we're going to talk about in that morning session that would lead into the afternoon. The morning session is going to talk about the Aligned Industry Playbook. This is something that we've been looking at for about a year or two now. There are many retailers out there that have been using RFID for some time now. You've seen Macy's in the news, you've seen Nike in the news, you've seen Target in the news, you've seen Walmart in the news in the past and others. So the idea is each one of those different retailers typically puts together some type of requirements for their brands to do tagging with RFID. Most of those are similar. They're all based on almost the same documents, but there's some subtle differences. So what we've been doing over the past year is we've been consolidating and combining all of that information together, and we've created what we call an Aligned Industry Playbook. This is something we want to release out there into the wild for anyone to use. But this would be a way for people to try to collect all those together, make it simpler to adopt from the brand side, and make it easier for new retailers and entrants into the space to understand what would be a good set of requirements versus a bad set of requirements. Basically, we want to make it a little bit simpler and more transparent for everybody that's trying to get into the RFID tagging business for their stores, and to make that adoption process fast and easy. So we're going to be presenting that at the end of that morning session as well. Now, the afternoon session is going to be a special meeting of the advisory board, and the afternoon session is going to be limited to the RFID advisory board only. So if you're on the advisory board, you'll get a direct invite on that. But for everyone in general, we've got a lot of work that's been happening. Ever since we've been on lockdown and all the students and researchers have kind of been at home, our work output has really shot up. So I'm going to give a quick rundown of all the work streams that are going to have documents or papers that we're going to be reviewing or ready. One is going to be the BOPUS paper. We've been talking about this for a while now too. It's buy online, pick up in store. We have a team that's spent about a year now going around to various different retailers in the U.S. and evaluating their readiness for buy online, pick up in store. There's a scorecard with about 20 different criteria that we can rank how ready a retailer is for a good BOPUS experience for consumers. We know from industry studies that typically consumer satisfaction with buy online, pick up in store is generally in a 30 to 40% range. It's pretty bad. That was pre-pandemic. Now, who knows? More and more people are using buy online pickup than they were before, but we're going to try to talk a little bit about how we can understand how each retailer is doing as benchmarked against the rest of their colleagues and some areas where they can improve. So that BOPUS paper, we'll have a draft of that ready, and that's going to be a discussion group that we're going to be talking about there. The CHIP working group, clearly we've been talking about this, has been a big deal for 2 years now. We're moving into phase 2, which is moving out of the proof of concept and moving directly into the pilot, where we're going to start looking at the business case and some of the actual dollar values behind the project. We have a new set of partners, and in addition to some of the returning ones, this program has expanded considerably now. We're really kind of getting down into the making it work phase, and it's good. So you'll hear a little bit more about the phase 2 of CHIP, where we're at and where we're going with that. The DART project. DART was formerly called COMET. We changed the name because the scope kind of expanded a little bit more on that project. This is quantifying the consumer experience. So the group has created a model for retail stores where we can look at the process of a consumer shopping experience, look at the layout of the store itself, evaluate some metrics where we're trying to tie those together and adjust that consumer experience and adjust that store layout to be more advantageous to a smoother or better shopping experience. And then we're creating this in a way to where we can turn the dials and twist the levers or vice versa or whatever. The idea is that you can play with this model and see how, if I have my current store experience, but I want to change something like adding in some type of a price check station or putting in some type of a magic dressing room or adding in some type of a robot consumer shopping assistant or something like that. What does that do to that consumer process, and how does that affect those metrics that we're trying to affect, which may be conversion or it may be customer knowledge or location, things like that. This has been very successful. We've taken this through a draft through some early retailers, and right now we're actually creating a software model where we can preload historical data from a store into that and learn more about predicting future behavior when we start tweaking those stores. DART project, very big project that has grown from very small origins. Hear more about that at the board meeting as well. Next paper we're working on is RFID case pack quality assurance. And it sounds like a mouthful, but really this has grown out of requirements that we've seen for about a year now, which is we need to know whenever we scan a box or a case that the data that is on the ASN of what is supposed to be in that box is actually what is in that box. So we're taking in multiple data sources, whether it's 1D barcode, 2D barcode, weight, RFID, any visual or camera data we can pull, and we're wrapping that together and we're saying, how do we use that to guarantee that the items that we have on data file for what's in that box are actually in there? That data and quality assurance paper has grown from a very small couple pages to it's about 25, almost 30 pages now. And that is a model that we're releasing out for how anyone can check their case pack accuracy, which is crucial for trusting this data. As we get better and better and faster at shipping this data from partner to partner through the supply chain, we also have to ensure that it's accurate, and this is the accuracy piece of that. So more on that at the board meeting. In conjunction with that quality assurance paper, we're also putting together some performance requirements in the DC for RFID tunnels and systems. This is something, again, the industry's needed for some time now. There's a lot of different ways to solve the same problem when it comes to RFID for case pack scans or dock doors, but we're going to try to push out at least some aligned industry requirements so we can try to get on the same page in terms of what we're expecting from RFID scan performance. We're also going to talk about some studies on the food supply chain. We've been doing a few things now for food supply chain with case pack tracking, some of it RFID, some of it's not. Some of it's in the restaurant space, some of it's in the traditional grocery area, but we'll talk a little bit about the updates on the study there. Finally, back in 2010, we did a 60 use case paper which tried to go through and map the full retail supply chain and say what are the 60 use cases that we could potentially use RFID up and down that supply chain. That was 10 years ago, and a lot has changed since then. We know way more than we did now, and the supply chain has changed considerably as well. So that paper is getting a much needed update, revamp, facelift. It's much better now, and it is much more accurate, I believe, as well. So we're coming to a draft on that, and we want to talk about that with the group as well. There will be some ARC updates. There's some big changes coming to the ARC program very soon. Clearly, ARC has been expanding pretty rapidly in the past year or two. It's gone from performance on the inlays to performance and quality. Now we're looking at some pre-validation of supplier source tagging, which includes things like data and others. It's expanded out into aviation, standard accuracy on the actual tags themselves on the flyable parts, several other things. So that ARC program has grown to the extent to where we're ready to start pushing that out for standardization beyond just Auburn, but to the community in general. So we'll talk a little bit about that path and the progress that we're going to make there. So that's a lot of stuff. Most of that is on the retail front. Right now, retail has been very active. I haven't talked as much about aviation because aviation is really an odd thing right now, especially in commercial aviation. I'm sure you can see it in the news yourself today. So there's a lot of stuff that we're doing behind the scenes that we're not really ready to talk about right now in terms of helping to support things like baggage tracking, customer tracking, tracking some of the food and beverages that are moving onto the aircraft for commercial aviation and others. And then clearly there's a big crossover between all of the packages that are being carried on some of the commercial flights now, more and more of that as opposed to just customers and baggage. I will say that we have made some significant progress in our relationship on the aerospace front. We are looking very hard at supply chain and logistics when it comes to space. There is a few new projects that we put together. We're close to finishing out the aviation bay over there, and then also the test analog or the test bed that we're using for future space vehicles, as well as going to be using it for commercial vehicles here on the Earth, is nearing some final requirements. So we're looking at trying to put that thing in real soon. So anyway, a lot of stuff, a lot of fronts. Thank you all. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact me, and we'll see some of you in June, and I will talk to the rest of you next month. Thank you very much.